I am Alice Mong, Executive Director of Asia Society Hong Kong, and I'm delighted to welcome all of you this morning to our symposium on Lalan, which is something we've been looking forward to for many months, and I'm so glad to see so many of you here this morning on an early Saturday morning. I was telling Dr. Kwok earlier, I'm not a morning person, but I always look forward to events like this. We have a very special event today, this symposium that, as I say, we've been working a long time to put it together, and it's hybrid. It's a hybrid program because we have so many of you here with us at the Miller Theater and also joining us online. And that seems to be the new normal these days. So we're so happy to have so many people interested in the work of Lalan to join us this morning for this symposium. And this afternoon, we have another exciting part 2 of the symposium. So before we get started, just some formality. As the executive director, I really want to thank all those of you who made this symposium and also the exhibition possible. Unfortunately, due to unfortunate circumstances in the States, I was not here for the opening, but I watched it live from the States, and I was so excited, even though I was not here in person, but to see the energy, even though I was in there, the energy in the room for the opening that night was really palpable. So thank you for those of you who were there for the opening. And then again, the people who made this exhibition and the symposium possible. First of all, Hong Kong Arts Development Council. Without their support, matching grant, we would not be able to bring you this 4th series of our Chinese Contemporary Women Artists series of the 20th century, which is something we're very particularly proud of. We started talking about this Women Artists series by asking, how come there's not that many women artists, especially Chinese women artists? We know people like Zhao Wuqi, Wu Guanzhong, Zhu Dequn, Shan Yu, but where were the women? And that was the question that we asked really over 5 years ago, because the series started around then, and we had the fortune, really the opportunity of presenting the artists Fang Zhaolin, Pan Yiliang, and then about a year and a half ago, it seems like so long ago, Irene Zhou, and then this is our 4th series, Xie Jinglan. Somebody who I have to confess I did not know that much about, but through the preparation of this exhibition, Extended Figures, the Art and Inspiration of Lalan, I got to learn so much more. And today, I'm looking forward to learning more. And I want to thank, again, one person who really made this possible is Catherine Kwok. Catherine, for coming to talk to us about the idea and for helping us to bring the exhibition in today's symposium. So the others I want to thank are Kwai Fong Foundation Limited and the MAIIAM, the Contemporary Art Museum in Philippines, and also Beishang Tang Foundation. We're busily working on the catalog, and the Beishang Tang Foundation, again, has generously will be sponsoring the publication of the catalog. So stay tuned for that. And I know the staff has been, my colleagues at the gallery team, Doris and Tiffany, have been working very hard on that. So that's my thank you. And just a bit of plug about Asia Society Hong Kong, for those of you who are not familiar with us. We've been around actually 9 years now. We'll be celebrating our 10th anniversary in this center in 2012, but we've been around since 1990. That last year and this year we're celebrating our 30th anniversary. Before the center opened, we did not have an opportunity to present exhibitions, although we had partnered with the Hong Kong Museum of Art on some exhibitions in the past, but we never had an opportunity to present our own curated art. And so thanks to the support of many of our sponsors and supporter, we 2012 opened the center here. So we really need to continue to fundraise and build our programming, especially our arts and cultural programming. And it's really exciting to coming off of our Basel, our Central, Christie's auctions, and all the excitement of last week to be able to present this symposium today. But programs like this and other exhibition, we really need to continue fundraising. So we're going to be doing our June 8th, our arts and cultural virtual gala online. And with it, we were very, very fortunate. Like almost 50 artists donated their artwork to us so that we can fundraise. 50% of the proceeds from the auction will go directly to the artist. And you can grab a copy of the auction catalog when you exit. And because we really feel in order for Hong Kong's ecosystem, our ecosystem to grow, we need to support the artists. It's not just institutions like us, but it's also the artists. Without them, there would be no art. And I think, and also now what's exciting with Lalan is some of the unsung hero of the art world, like her, they're getting their stories told. And I'm really, really excited that Asia Society Hong Kong has been able to play a role in that. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to the women who made this show, and as well as the symposium possible. Ms. Catherine Kwai, who really needs no introduction, and she has been able to, congratulations on your, the works that were shown at Art Basel, which also kind of parallel really well with the show we have here, over 30 plus artwork. And when I first saw the exhibition just a week ago, I was just mesmerized, and I hope you will too. The gallery will be open all day today, and so after the symposium or during breaks, please check out the exhibition at the Chantal Miller Gallery. So with that, I'm going to invite Catherine to come and get us started. Thank you.
Hello, good morning. Well, I'm so delighted, that I'm invited by the Asia Society to give a presentation about Lalan. So first, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you, Alice Mong. Like what you say, I came to you, we talked about, an exhibition for one of the, the 20th century female artists, which is not well known in Hong Kong for years, even in China. So thanks for the opportunity to give us, a chance, to borrow all the works from the collector and to present, her respective, So thank you. I have 1 hour, and I'm thinking, how I should make you to understand well about who is Lalan, and about her art evolution, and about her life. So I try very hard, but there's so many information. So I hope, then you have a patience, for all the details. I don't know Lalan, because she passed away in the 1995, which I get to know her in the 2000, and which is a much more later, after the death. I get to know her through the son and the very good friend of her, Jean-Michel. So for the last 8 years, I heard so many comments. They say, Catherine, Lalan is no good. Lalan is not a good artist. In fact, she's sort of like a copycat of a Zhao Wuqi, too much influenced by the famous, husband. So then that's my, lecture starts. Okay. At her 36, she divorced, Zhao Wuqi. And then that's already the 14 years, they moved to live in the Paris, from Shanghai. And the reason for the divorce is not because of anything special, because she just wants to become herself. She have a dream to become an artist. She don't want to be somebody's wife behind the scene. She really want to put her time and find a soulmate to share her vision, her dream. So she left, Zhao Wuqi at the age 36. And I want to tell you, she never paint, before she left Zhao Wuqi. It's only after, she left her. So the first painting, when we do the research, is in the 1958. The second, I want you to look at, I want you to look at this work. This work is true. There's a lot of similarity, with Zhao Wuqi's early work. You will see, Chinese calligraphy, you see, you know, the Chinese signage, and you see the brushstroke, then you say, wow, that's very similar to the Zhao's work. So is it she's influenced by her, by him? And that is not really true. '48, when they arrived Paris, at that time, in the Paris, you know, the art formal movement just comes in. And which is just after the Second World War, the Western Art Center gradually moved to New York. And artists all over the world, I think either they moved to New York to stay, or they came to from Holland, from Mexico, from Italy, and then they moved, you know, and gathered in France, hoping to gain, you know, to build the Paris still, you know, the art center for the world. 1940, this movement, in fact, has really highlighted, you know, the freedom and also the innovation from the artists. I think, you know, Kurt, you're here. I know you're teaching the fine art. I think all artists, you know, what they don't want to follow the tradition. They want to have their own identity. They want to break through. So they try to get away from the tradition and be finding their own, you know, unique style. So that's the period. And we know it. At that time, in the Paris, you know, dramatic, you know, movement, expression is very popular. Surrealism is a time. So then, you know, they came up with the idea, say what we should do, and also please bear in mind, during that period, you know, as I say, after Second World War, American economic become very, very strong. So for the economic reason, for the safety reason, and for the, you know, new, you know, century, a lot of artists, you know, immigrate to the New York. And at that time, even the American government, you know, give a lot of money to support, build a museum, and then they start with to promote their own, you know, culture. So where the abstract expressionism movement is coming in. So this art formal movement, and that we call it, is in parallel, or I would say maybe against, you know, maybe it's a comparison with the abstract expression movement. Oh, sorry. Okay. 48, when you know, when the Zhao and Lalan arrived, you know, in Paris, Zhao is very fortunate. I think you heard the story. The father gave him $30,000. Think about it, $30,000 at that time. I think you can buy a very good property and can live very well. So what he do? He immediately, you know, stay in Montparnasse and even have a studio at the near, you know, the Montparnasse, you know. So where you have to see the photo, we're trying to find you. He already, you know, make friends with all this, you know, artists coming from overseas. Jean Ripiori, Hans Hartung, you know, the Pierre Soulages, and then the Georges Madu. Please remember the Georges Madu is one of the important figure later we should talk about. So, because they all from, you know, this artist is not from artists. Some of it is from Canada, some is from Holland. So with a different culture, you know, they get excitement. They share the culture, they integrate, and then they come up with a new idea. And what then you ask me, then what is the characteristic for the art formal movement? Look at the viewpoint. They want to break away from the tradition. They think they don't need to, you know, paint the reality. They want to get away. So they think spontaneity is very important. That means, you know, very directly, intuition, you know, from the inside. Expressive gesture from the body movement. Calligraphy lines and symbols. Exploration of colors and materials. Lyrical and emotional. That's what I find very interesting. Calligraphy. So what happened, at that time, and that gets me excited is that's a period, the French artists, has so much admiration and inspiration from my Chinese calligraphy because of the cursive calligraphy, the movement, and then also the dynamism, and also the very expressive lines. So all this, characteristic is, our formal movement. Okay, let's look at, how George Medieu paints. Gesture, body movement, intuition, without any, initial planning, for what he want to paint. And also, he is the one to start, with another art critique, about this lyrical abstraction, which is one of the movement under, the art formal. Now I want to show you Zhao Ke's painting. Did you find anything similar to the first painting I showed you for Lalan? Same thing. Calligraphy, signage for the characters, and also heavy stroke, intuition, direct, heavy texture. So all this, again, from here, look at the piece large. Early work, 1949, this pieces is also influenced by the China and the calligraphy. Hans Hartung, look at that. Isn't it very similar to our Chinese calligraphy nice? Like a cursive, the painting. This is the second piece I show you for Lalan's work. So what I try to tell you, she's not, influence or copy, the style from Zhao Ke. Basically, when they arrive, she's in the movement. So all the artists around them, is going to the same direction. So even she never learned a painting before, but then around her, this is all the idea, and then she saw it for the last 14 years before she started to paint. The same with Zhao Ke, is under the same movement, the lyrical abstraction. Then I want to talk about, her, life now. Born in 1921. And then we say, that's the time for China is called May 4th New Cultural Movement. And even in China, after so many war, the invasion from the outside, I think, the people at that time really want to seek innovation and promote the modernization of the ideology and the culture. So, and that's where the time Lalan was born. I try to find you interesting, that's where, the houses. And then the family is from Guizhou, and is a business. The grandfather is a businessman, for the wood business, wood trading. She moved to, the whole family, moved to the Hangzhou at some point when she's young. She had a very special family. One side is very traditional, but then I think, the grandfather believed so much about the education. Later, when I made the research, I'm so surprised, all her uncle is a study sent to Germany for the medical study, sent to Harvard, and then most of them, after graduation, they came back to China, and being the professor, teaching in the school or in the research center. So, but very, none of them, I would say, is inheriting the grandparents' business. And that's where Lalan has grown up. So education, intelligence is very important in the family. And when she was 8 years old, the father bought her a piano, and then she started to learn the piano. at the age of 14, and then she met Zhao Ke. because they both are studied in the Hangzhou, the National Academy, so the college. So, but one is in the music, the other in the visual art. And in 1941, which, when Lalan is 20 years old, they marry in Hong Kong. You know why they marry in Hong Kong? Little story. Because at that time, China is under, after, the Japanese war, and then, just settle down. But I think, the parent, feeling, that is not too safe. And both of them, they have a lot of Shanghainese family already came to Hong Kong. Especially one family is their father's, good friend. So they say, why don't you go to Hong Kong and see, whether you have any chances, in Hong Kong, or one day went overseas. So they came here and then they married. Look at those photos, Even in what I want to tell about, Lalan, her family, and then how she grew up. Seems even 14 years old, she's know Zhao Wuqi very well, and the two families become very close friends. So Lalan is always with the artists. I mean, seems, even a young age. So 14 onward, and then she was making friends with all the Hangzhou, master teacher, like Lin Fengman, Wang Dayu, all this. '48. It took 3 months, on the yacht, the big boats, to come to Paris. That is, this photo I took, in Paris, Rue du Moulin Rouge is where, Zhao Wuqi have their first home and also the studio. And you know who is next to Zhao Wuqi's studio? Alberto Giacometti. And then they became very good friends. And at that time, this photo shows Chang Yu. When Lalan was in Paris, I think, even through the rest of the life, before the Chang Yu died, she's such a big friend of Chang Yu. So when you read the Chang Yu's book, you always find, there's also mentioning about Lalan. When she arrived Paris, 49, she don't want to become only just a wife. She studied, at the Conservation National Superior of Music, about composing music, not only, as a just, a prayer. And by the way, even she's a soprano, but because at one time she got sick, she lost the voice, and that's why she cannot sing. And then when I with Zhao Wuqi, at the old age, I can tell you, I think it's because of Lalan's influence. He sang opera, and then he still went at least once a week to hear the opera performance, So you can see how good, how much Lalan influenced Zhao Wuqi also. And the 54, the very famous, the critique and the artist Henry Michel introduced, Lalan, to the father of electronic music, Edgar Varese. Okay. Should not say his student. He's really studied the composition of electronic music under his guidance. Varese widened the material of music to include the noise as a musical sound. Because as I say, Lalan is playing the classical music, and it is a very disciplinary. And he or she always want to find a breakthrough. And with this new music, electronic music, which really free her, liberate her, from the discipline. And then the electronic music, let's see the next one. Okay. Oh, before we talk further the music, and that's where Lalan met the second husband. It's also introduced, by, the Henry, Michel. And then 6 years later, 57. So they get married. Just give you a little bit background. Michelle Wen, the husband, Michelle, is a violinist. And I heard about, from the son, he told me, even when he's 16 years old, he was already, invited to play, his own created, composition in front of the king, So he's a very, very, very talented. And then he's also like the other artists, they love Paris, He moved from Belgium and lived in Paris, and that's how they met. So after, they get married, you see that? They committed to create electronic music together. And then the first starting, the electronic music studio in the laundry room, of the parents' house. I can tell you, both of them are from overseas. And when Lalan divorced, there's nothing she got, from the husband. She just walked out. Even at that time, Zhao Qi is already very famous and can sell very well. She don't want it. She didn't want anything. And what I know, what she only get is a little, country house in the Switzerland, where there they always went for holiday, and where they met a lot of artists, big artists from Switzerland, and that's what Lalan, got from the ex-husband. Lalan is, I think, very intelligent. What amazed us, is that she never stopped learning. She has so much, energy, curiosity, and then she keep on. So in the 90s, earlier we say she started playing in the 1958, but at that time, I would say her career is mainly in the music composition. So 60 to 70, most of the time, is how to improve, her music. She have a, but she's not an amateur. She even, created soundtracks for the film of French New Wave director Chris Marker for many times. And also, she also invited to be the film composer, certified by the Association of French Composers and Music Editors. So this proves, she's a very professional in music. Isn't it interesting? We're trying to find back, to do research, I find back the notes. That's where she get the inspiration from the electronic music. Because when we talk about electronic music, the sound is come from where? It's come from the nature, from your daily life. It could be, the car sound. It could be, the bells, the ring bells, or somebody's door. So when she, compose the music, you see, what she write? The horse, the wave, the gunshot. So this is all the, from reality, where she get the inspiration. So when we write it, then downstairs is the notes. What she want to do is to liberate and give a new idea, for the sound, for the music. Below is one of her painting. For me, I give a little bit summary here. If you see, how she, her art evolution, music. So I would say, he's both the musical and pictorial. In fact, she have a kind of art, it's an emptiness and fullness. Just trying to balance the yin and yang. And also between the earth and heaven, between the fox and cosmos. She's like any one of the formal artists. They never draw sketches. Or except Zhao Qi draw sketches. Pierce or last years, but there are not many others. So her both brushes, you can see, is showing, the energy and expression. Again, I must remind you, she never learned painting. But she was such in-depth, the understanding about the music. So where, in fact, it's talking, when she's making music, in fact, it's an emotion. All these notes up speed, So in her painting, you can see very direct emotion, the real emotion from within. This painting was displayed, at the, the exhibition hall. Fantastic, a very big size. When you stand in front of it, you just feel it, the explosive energy from her very vigorous, brushstroke. And this is the early work. And I would still say this is the period still influenced, by the art formal movement. This is her statement. He said, they are abstract painting, but it's a completely, by the movement, by my figures, by my hands, by my movement from my body. So that's why Alice Mont has mentioned Asia Society create very beautiful title, Extend the Figure. This order, is from her own movement. It's not from the within, the composition of a drawing. '50, very interesting. She have a sort of document of a Martha Graham, which is a very big, contemporary dancer. So after that, just another inspiration. And then she immediately attended modern dance lesson at the American Center in Paris. So she start to dance now. I want to show you. Isn't it beautiful? She have her own music in her mind. And then she dance, in according with her own composed music, yeah. When you look at this film, what you feel? In fact, the extended figure in the exhibition hall, a lot of painting is really like her body, the forms of the hands, the stretch of the necks, that forms the night. This is herself, I think maybe ready to dance, yeah. Music and her dance, all the forms, where from, all the nights. Now you start to understand. Great. Now we move to talk about, okay, that's the first period. As again, I emphasize, her first, period, of art is basically influenced, by the art formal, some of the characteristic, but also her own music and dance. So 65, I think like every artist, they want to seek for, another stage. They want to break through. They just don't want to stay there painting the same thing. So she is trying to find another inspiration. I remember Zhao Wuke has once told me, he said, for Chinese artists, when we live in China, we really don't like the Chinese tradition that much. And then we all want to go to overseas, seeking for freedom and then to learn something, to liberate ourselves. But he said, when I am away from China and live in Paris for years, when I look back, I find it, my goodness, the tradition is beautiful. And there's so many philosophy and then a lot of, inspiration. So in fact, both of them, I would say Zhao Qi the same. At the second period in the 70s also, is going back, to seek, the new inspiration is from Chinese philosophy and also the Chinese, traditional painting. So where Lalan the same, I think she go back to find, she look at the Southern Song Dynasty landscape painting, and which is have a lot of similarity, which is not to imitate, nature, And instead of seeking the spirit, I think the same with her dancing and music. It's an inner truth, and she put this inner truth into her painting. And the second interesting is when you look at what really gives to her is the Ma Yuan, the famous master artist, Is the composition arrangement and leaving large area of a brain space. 我们中文叫留白. And also give a lot of space, for breathing and a lot of space for imagination. You see? The master, right? So this is her second phase of the work. The influence, so you can see. But for sure, she's not really doing like a Chinese, painting, Liu Bai, painting nothing. But she does paint, with his color. Very interesting, if you look at this work, we're trying to find it in the old photo. Usually with a Western, a painter, they would put, the painting, the oil on the easel and sit there to paint. But with the Lalan, very special. She has a staircase. She put herself like a bird, to overview the painting. And even she would deepen. Sometimes she would use, the cubism. So she have all kind of material. It's not only using a brush only. And also at this time, she loved to study, the Taoism. I don't know how many of you know about the Taoism. Basically, there's no God. In that the universe, the God is the Tian, 最大, the most important. So we think, in that 天地合一, just we human beings, we have to live well with the universe. We should be, because the universe stayed there for 1,000 years, for millions of years. We will go away, only one life. And the nature is the biggest, the most important. And then we seek for the harmony and live balance, with what happened with the real world. So that's, from her painting, can you see that? From the first period, it's a very explosive, very emotional, very direct. It's more about her own, inner emotion. But I would think the second stage is more, the Chinese philosophy has a lot of impact with her. She's seeking, for the life at her mid-age, about the balance, about what is life. Beautiful, right? I always see when I look at her painting, I just feel she's dancing on her canvas. Oh, this is interesting. Remember I told you, a lot of the painting, for this period is painted in Switzerland. Because she got that little, the village home, the country home in Switzerland near the Geneva, near the Zurich. So there's a lot of a mountain, snow mountain, it's all from a Swiss scene. Okay. When Chinese, when we talk about Chinese ink painting, we talk about qi yuan. In fact, it's basically it's a rhythm emphasized by the Chinese brush and ink into a very abstract composition. And I would say, when I look at her painting, when I look at the Chinese ink painting, I really find this qi yun shen dong, the movement is there. 71 is another period. I think she's never be happy, or she never stop, for creation. She's always seeking, the new idea. I think basically it's like all of us, we have a new idea, how should we do it? Yeah. And then the 71, so let's look at it. She invented spectacle. Then you say, what is that? In fact, she put music, dance, and painting together. She's not more satisfied say, oh, I want to paint some painting and have an exhibition in a gallery or space. No. She wants to integrate the three kinds of art, visual and performance art together. It's very innovative. And think about it. That's not the popular things at that time. It's very avant-garde. You see, she danced, in front. At that time, she started to paint very huge size of the painting because she wanted to take it as the backdrop, so she can dance in front of it. '75, I would say, she's from nobody become a somebody. The government really honored him a decoration, the French government, Knights of the Order of Arts and Letters. And then this, the southern, blue is permanently collected by the French Minister of Culture. You see, again. Alice, we have a bigger space. I can bring you this one. Yeah, how big is it? 3, I find 3 in Paris, It's about 5 meter, the length, So we need bigger space, next time to do the spectacle, and then find a dancer to dance, together, with her work. You see, again, performance. The Dao season, okay, this is a very, famous performance. Use a 张子的蝴蝶梦, the butterfly, about, to talk about this story, but in a very contemporary way. Oh, I must explain. Marcel, the husband, later became a kinetic sculptor. So that's her work. So they both, in the later stage, they both love, to do it together, joint exhibition. So one is making the kinetic sculpture, the other is the painting. And I would say at this stage, 75 onward, you would say, look at the, the Marcel's, the kinetic, the form, the line, and also because of the wind's movement, of the sculpture. I think I find it quite interesting is that in the Lalan's painting, you see, Marcel's kinetic sculpture, the movement. She loved to paint, the big size and let the artist, to stand on it. It's like, integrate into her universe, That's the painting, displayed at the exhibition hall. This one, I must explain. She's so advanced, She already painted, at that time, this word is called the birth of water. In fact, he painted 55, slides, showing the process of the world from birth to destruction in the water. So the background is created by herself. And then is a use, the digital, the slide, to show, like today's video. So it's not really to show the video, but the basically is painted by her. This is the work from the mid-80s. Lalan gradually don't do so much music and the dance. I think because maybe, the age. So I think she's more concentrated in creating more works. But this time, the 2 great friends has passed away. One is the Henry Michel and also the musician Edgar Varese. And then this 2 painting is she paint homage, to these big friends. '88, Lalan and then Marcel moved to the Mimosol, where, a city, in the South France, where the nature is so beautiful. And then they can get a bigger studio and bigger home at a very much, cheaper price. So then they start to create, the kinetic work and the big, size painting. I would say, I call the, we label it, say we separate, we say this is her third period of art. Can you see that? We see more pieces. And then the left side is the poem. And then she started to write a lot of poem. If you ask me, I think for the last, period, I think it's really like, no more forms, no more landscape, no more moon, everything back to the 100% abstract. Our formal period, you still can find the calligraphy, carve the signage of the calligraphy. But I think, with the later stage, everything become purely abstract. It's like a melting her philosophy, her emotion, everything melting together and through the inner reflection. So she really stepped away from the figurative element of the landscape. And I would say the word is more pure and more it's a simplified expression, but there is a kind of a dynamism in it. I feel the joy. I don't know, because, in one of the video, which I got from the friend, asked, it's an interview about her labors, her friends, at this period. It seems everyone told me, in the video said, she's a very happy person. You can meet her in the street, she's laughing, she's jumping. So even at her age, late 60 or 70. So from the work, I can see the joy and then the contempt, of herself, in the painting. So balanced. Wow, this is beautiful. It's like I don't know, when I look at this painting, it's like diving into the water, into the calmness, of the water. The color is because it's in the mimosa. There's so many beautiful flowers, and then she loved, the son told me she loved the gardening. So there's a very nice garden, and there's many lands around. So that's another hobby. She liked to plant her own, flowers, the plant. So where the color is basically from where, the flower and the plants. From this painting, for the last two paintings, you will say, instead the body movement is manifested in the different beautiful lines and forming, I would say, it's like a universe. You cannot tell. It could be the flower, it could be the tree, but it's like a universe. And I call it as like a dancing universe. That's Lalan next to the painting we show you. Oh, at this time, Lalan again is a practicing Qigong. So you will see from this painting, when I look at it many times, I really feel the breathing up and down, the calmness, and also the rhythm, it's basically quite much, from the Qigong. And also, if you look at it, I think, the way she paints is not really like a drawing. Dipping, splashing, all kind of material. I would even sometimes say what kind of ink. Sometimes he used the pigment. He mixed her own, oil to do it. That is a paper work. So, but then that is a very thick paper, and then can hold all this, quite interesting, painting material. You look at the detail, right? I even call it a lot of dots, I think it's from her movement, from the brush. This film is in the year 1995, and she is 74 years old. And she still is not finished, this video. And this never been finished. She was doing, a film about as a solo dance, 20 minutes in the studio, standing in front of a large vertical painting. The painting is a sheep hanger, and giving her life figures in her own melody, and bringing the body movement of a qigong into dance. So you can see how, the harmonious spirit inside her. But very sorry. I think, before she can show this, video in front of the puppet, 1 week later, she had a car accident and then she passed away. Thank you. I just want to, I hope, within little time, that I have so many research. I think I can talk to you about 3 hours and give more detail. But I just want to give you, within this hour, who is Lalan and what is her work. As one thing I must say, I respect her so much. It's because she never, become a commercial artist. She have her own mind. She strive for her vision. She's very bold. I would say she have very strong character. Even she have a little such elegant and slim figure, but she determined, to go for her dream. And through all the research, I would say every painting is from her heart. It's from her own emotion. It's from her mind. So it's nothing is that she created for you. She created for herself. She created for people who enjoy her work. And I think that's the whole thing about this exhibition. We want to bring her, to show you who is Lalan, and we wish. I think it's from the family on behalf of the son. Oh, Alice, I must say it. The son is so. She says she look at the video every day, we send her the video about the exhibition. I think he called me. He said, I nearly cry once a day. He said, I can't believe, my mother's work is beautifully exhibit and let everybody to understand her. So that's the whole purpose. We wish you enjoy the exhibition. We wish you to enjoy her work. And also, I think for me, my job is to bring you to give a respect to this lady. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. That was fabulous. I'm almost in tears because her energy kind of just reminds me of my father's energy. She would have been a contemporary of my father, whom I just lost about a month, April 5th. And what did my father do the latter part of his life when he retired? He rediscovered calligraphy. So we found a whole stack of his calligraphy. That and his energy is in the calligraphy. So the energy, what you talked about there, definitely really come through. And what you said about Lalan's son is how I feel about my own father and the energy. Again, their legacy. They were kind of like Lalan. They left their home country to do something better for themselves and the family, and that's really the key. And that video, thank you, and the rest of the video you can see over at the gallery. So I'm really, really thankful. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. And now it's my delight to introduce our second speaker, Dr. Elaine Kwok. Dr. Elaine Kwok Yingning. She is the part-time lecturer at the Center for China Studies, the Chinese University of Hong Kong. And she earned her PhD and MPhil in art history from University of Hong Kong. And her research fields include history of aesthetics in both Chinese and Western art, cross-cultural interaction between China and the West, and comparison between Chinese and Western art. And we're really delighted Dr. Kwok is here with us to give us the second part of the presentation. Dr. Kwok?
Good morning, everybody. So very welcome here. And thank you, Catherine, and thank you, Alice. I just want to emphasize that how excited I am about today because so many of you showed up here. You guys have no idea how wonderful it is to talk about art and art history in person. So because we've been teaching online, by Zoom, and today I want to talk about Lalan, but from another perspective, synesthesia. So before I jump into the main thing, I want to give special thanks to Guifeng Hin, because of Catherine and her whole team support to have information and images of Lalan. And also very thankful for Asia Society's invitation for me to give this talk. And her whole team, Alice's whole team is wonderful. I had a good time. Thank you, all of you guys. So today, wow, here is really freezing. I thought I could put up with the cold without this, but I was wrong. Okay. So today I'm going to talk about Lalan from these few, I think maybe 4 aspects, and all of them, they are sequenced in a very logical way. So after hearing what Catherine has talked about Lalan's artwork, and she talked about Lalan's from a kind of biographical perspective, and today I'm going to talk about her in these 4 ways. First of all is to talk about very relevant other perspectives other than a synesthetic perspective, and then to talk about synesthesia in art, not in science, and then to say a few words about how to see synesthesia in Lalan's artwork. And then finally, I really want to justify why do we need to think about Lalan's artwork from a synesthetic perspective. So the whole thing for us to learn about Lalan's artwork, because I want to say that this is an introduction, and I want to invite you and anyone on Zoom or anyone in the whole world to really further investigate and examine Lalan's artwork. And by this way, I want you to be aware of the fact that this presentation is an introduction. So I really hope you guys can grasp some kind of introductory framework to do your further investigation and examination. So first of all, there are many other relevant and good perspectives. First of all, from Catherine's biographical perspective, in the existing literature or scholarship on Lalan, usually we will come across, first of all, feminist perspective, and then abstract expressionist perspective, and then cross-cultural. I'm not going to talk very much into the further details of each one of them, but my point is to tell you that today, my perspective, synesthetic perspective, which is not exclusive or not excluding all these relevant, very good perspective. Instead, I want to emphasize that it is a kind of very inclusive attitude towards how to investigate Lalan's artwork and her art achievement. So here we go, the first one, feminist perspective. And I don't need to mention too much or explain too much how difficult it was for a female, any female, to excel in any field. In Lalan's time, and especially in so many, except for let's say the household field, I guess a female excel. Otherwise, in the societal ones, every single field would be extremely difficult for any female to get her own name, other than somebody's wife or somebody's girlfriend, something like that. So that one is quite well known. But I want to say that a lot of, I'm not saying feminist perspective is a kind of commonly agreed, but I'm saying that by using feminist perspective, you can get to understand the difficulty and the very special value of Lalan, how she thrived and how she excelled in this kind of difficult field. So when, and at that time when she was developing her own independence, Zhao Wuji, he was already quite famous, and the whole circle was pretty much male dominant, and I don't know. So at that time, you can imagine. I know it's really difficult for us in Hong Kong to imagine this because in Hong Kong, female we do enjoy a lot of gender equality. So special thanks for those ladies. They fought for their significance, and special thanks for those gentlemen. They support gender equality. Very grateful for their achievement. So this is one. And of course, when we are looking at Zhao Wuji's artworks, and we put them together with Lalan's, no help. I mean, you cannot help but comparing them together and then say something like, oh, Lalan is influenced by Zhao Wuji. Or maybe if you are equal enough, you may say, oh, they are influencing each other. I agree, how can you say they do not influence each other? Of course they do, but the whole thing is to understand that if you want to develop further than the influence from your partner, that is the difficult thing, and it's not easy. And she exists at that kind of achievement, other than, having some kind of influence, or you may call it inspiration from each other or from her partner. So that is absolutely relevant. So I want to credit this kind of scholarship on Lalan's artwork. The other thing, the next thing is abstract expressionism. In this period, as Catherine mentioned, is already quite common in the art field. So to get away from the rational thinking and then just to do your painting in a very spontaneous manner, that was a kind of, the common ground in that field by then. So here we go. The kind of the master of abstract expressionism is Jackson Pollock. And when I'm teaching at the university, usually I would mention something like, okay, you may think this kind of painting is a kind of 2-year-old kid's work, because my friends, a lot of them, they keep saying something like, oh my goodness, this is our work. Are you kidding me? My 2-year-old son can do it even better. Well, it's true. In terms of art creation, you are absolutely right. However, in terms of the whole creation, the breaking through from the traditional art development in the West, then you might find something very different. So here is Zhao Wuji, abstract expressionism here, and then Jackson Pollock on the other hand. You can see directly without any training or without looking into anything further for the deeper information. You understand that, okay, in terms of the visual presentation, visual features, they are very alike. So if you put Lalan's artwork right next to Jackson Pollock, you find the same thing. So the point is, yes, it's very absolutely relevant to talk about Lalan's artwork from abstract expressionist perspective. I think it's really, really right. And the point is to talk about her in relation to abstract expressionism. I want you guys to be aware of the historical significance or the historical importance of abstract expressionism without just thinking, it's just following Jackson Pollock. So here is Magritte's Ce n'est pas une pipe is a kind of, the intellectual negation through this writing. Through that writing to talk about, my goodness, this is not a pipe. Then what are you looking at? The next line should be, you are looking at the representation of the pipe instead of the pipe. So that is the negation. Negation of what? Negation of the whole system. It had been around for more than 500 years. That was developed in the Renaissance. That is linear perspective system. And in that system, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to bore you guys to death, to talk about all the details about linear perspective. But I'm saying that this perspective system, linear perspective system, it had been around more than 500 years. And then some group of people, abstract expressionist artists, they dare to break down this one and then to tell everybody that we are no longer following this totally. You may say Cubism, yeah, it breaks down the linear perspective system. However, it's not in that total sense. So here, the negation is to break down the window, no longer a window. So the window representational system is no longer there. For you to see the pipe, you are seeing the representation. It's just one word difference. However, the one word representation really tells you that the painting is a painting, not the world, not, oops. How come? Oh. Oops, sorry. How can I? Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. How can I do that? Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I'm not very good at machine and technology. So here, this one system is extremely influential. It had been around, as I said, 500 years, more than 500 years. So to break it down with this is extremely difficult. So with Magritte's, this one, the intellectual negation, then Lalan, and it's similar to Jackson Pollock to have this kind of, negation. So put them together. I don't know why. Okay, so here to put them together, we get to see is a very big breakthrough to say a total no to the window system. And we put it together, we can see the achievement of Lalan. If you analyze Lalan from this abstract expressionist perspective, and if we take a look at Lalan's artwork here with Rothko, so you get the same feeling that it's a very negative approach to the representational system. So put it together. Get to see, you can analyze that. Oh, okay, Lalan's artwork is from abstract expressionism. Definitely, I agree. My talk today is to tell you, or is to introduce to you one more perspective to analyze that. So put Lalan's artwork in all these categories. You may say the same thing about her historical significance and contribution to art development in the West, especially. So here we go. The intellectual negation becomes, total visual negation without saying any words to remind you of the fact that this is a representation, because the representation itself doesn't represent anything concrete from the external world, the material physical world. That is the point. That is the material world it is negating for. Okay. So after that, you may also analyze Lalan from another perspective that is cross-cultural, because, as Catherine mentioned, that she's from Chinese culture and she had a very deep education background and very solid education about Chinese tradition, not only art but also literature, and then later, as Catherine mentioned, that she practiced Qigong and Tai Chi, so on and so forth. So that kind of root understanding or the practice of Chinese civilization is very deep, and definitely is very relevant to analyze Lalan's artwork from this cross-cultural perspective. So if we think about the tradition, this kind of the application of ink or the ink play, it was very early in Chinese art history, especially as, for example, in the Northern Song dynasty. At that time, Northern Song is around 900 CE, and then you may look at the nowadays we have Zhang Daqian's artwork here, also in line with this kind of big ink play tradition. So if we talk about, so these are the information. And if we talk about Lalan's artwork and put it together with Jean Datian, you may say, oh, wow, so on the one hand, they are both, in line with the tradition. On the other hand, they are also mixing with so much Western culture in their own way, or to express it in a cross-cultural, interactive way. And this is another very good example of cross-cultural interaction. Artist, Zhu Dechun, and when I'm teaching at the university, I usually warn my students to look at the brushwork and how much brushwork in the traditional way that artists in the West, they would have their brushwork shown until very late. It was quite common in Impressionism and Post-Impressionism, but it was very rare, especially in the Renaissance. In the Baroque, you might see some, for example, Velasquez, you saw some brushwork. However, the brushwork itself was not accepted or praised in the early time for centuries until very late. But for Chinese culture, it's always the first thing. For today, I don't have enough time to share with you when it was starting, but I just want to emphasize that it was pretty much starting on first day. And here, Zhu Dechun, he was using the brushwork, but in the medium of oil paint. And that's some kind of, cross-cultural aspects of his artwork. So if you think about Lalan's artwork, you may say, oh, so we can see the similarity, that kind of cross-cultural aspects, and it's definitely true. I would totally agree with you, and I hope you guys are interested. Today would be the first, if it's the first time you think about it, I hope it's not the end of, or that would be it for you. I hope you go further to look at Lalan's artwork in person here, to look at her brushwork, and then the pattern of lines, and those are in line with the tradition of calligraphy. So I want to use this expression to emphasize that a lot of people, they do see Lalan from her, very deep cultural roots from Chinese culture. So it's full of, you may say, Chinese graphics. So all these relevant perspective is to tell, saying all that much is to tell you that do not just think, oh, today is synesthesia and that's it, and Elaine only wants a synesthesia for Lalan. No, synesthesia perspective actually embraces all of them. But the focus is synesthesia for our today's session. Synesthesia in art. This is session B. So I want to say that synesthesia is not only in art, but also in science. For today, our discussion cannot cover that part, so I'm going to focus on only the synesthesia in art. And you may look it up on the internet and then get excited about cognitive science, neuroscience, and they have so much interesting stuff to talk about synesthesia. And I really want you guys to go into further details if you are scientists or you are interested in science stuff. So here we go. In art, actually, synesthesia, or this kind of a synchronizing interaction or experience, especially in music and art, was all the way back. When I was an MPhil student, I came across, Isaac Newton. You may say, oh, Isaac Newton, how come he's a scientist? Yes, at that time, I was reading about his color theory, and he was trying very hard and so much energy to solve the problem between color tone and the music tone, so on and so forth. And of course, his color theory of 7 colors, it was rejected later. And later, scientists, they found out that the basic colors, light colors, not painting, like colors, there are 3. And music and color, not only in science, but also in a lot of other exploration by artists and art theorists. And here is the readings that I consulted. I'm not going to try to pronounce the German word. It would be terrible, but it means a total artwork or total work. So this is the key. The key is to talk about the multidimensional and to emphasize the the synesthesia in so many different ways at the same time, seen in Greek Greek word that means at the same time. So here we go, and the at the same time as a unified whole, that is synesthesia. So in art, maybe you guys have already had some kind of synesthesia or synesthetic experience, but just you were not aware of. And I want you guys to understand that synesthesia is a very broad, embracing, inclusive attitude to tell us that whenever we are experiencing that, we are not dominated by one sense only. So it's this kind of embracing attitude. These are the reference, just to show you, if you want to go further, there are just tons of literature on that, and some of them are very exciting. I when I'm reading them, I got the feeling like, watching Korean soap opera. I got excited. Everything. Oh, what's next? What's next? And so synesthesia in art, that is, it's been a long time, but now we need to be focused on Lalan and how to use synesthetic perspective to understand and to analyze Lalan's artwork in terms of her importance in art, not just in her life, but in the art world and then in our world. So synesthesia in Lalan's artwork. Well, first of all, it's really, really important for me to emphasize that today my discussion is focused on the art curation side, because it would take another approach or a very different approach to analyzing synesthesia in Lalan's artwork on the side of art reception. I hope you can understand. If you do not, give me a few minutes, I'll take you through. So the art reception part is to say, I don't care who Lalan is, or I don't care about her art creation. When I'm looking at her artwork, I'm in front of that, I feel something. Oh, I feel music, I feel dance, I feel, I don't know, I feel the magnetic field, or I feel subatomic particles, or whatever. That is the art reception side. And it would take a lot, and would take so much different, another different approach to analyze that, maybe quantitative or maybe qualitative, I don't know. It requires a further investigation. And if you are interested in this field, please go ahead. And then maybe next time, or not next time, today, when you go to the exhibition hall, please feel, whether you are experiencing some kind of dance or music or sound or whatever. And then you may want to share it with your friends or whatever. Then that is your reception side. That is art reception. And it might need some kind of, quantitative way or quantifying way to quantify it or whatever in order to measure it. Maybe if you are a scientist, you may want to set up a machine to connect with your brain and then to feel, what kind of magnetic field or that kind of neurons, so on and so forth. Well, that is the art reception. Today, I'm not going to talk about them, okay? And I encourage you to experience it and think more about that. So today, the art creation is the focus for my discussion with you guys. And I want to emphasize that it's not only Lalan, and all the way back to Kandinsky, and in a very big part of his life, his art life, he did a lot of artworks with the intention to generate music. And I want to share with you just a tiny little personal story, that when I'm talking about art reception, I do encourage you guys to feel more, to be more sensitive to your own feelings, because you know what? That's what I feel. Believe it or not, that's what I feel. And to be direct with you, and it's because of this feeling. It got me started to look at Lalan's art creation. And I hope one day I can have enough research and then share with you about the art reception side and analyze more about that. But today I'm going to be focused on the art creation. So I hear music when I'm looking at Kandinsky's painting. And even now, whenever I'm looking at Lalan's artwork, I don't know why I cannot explain it. I wish one day I could explain it. I feel dance. I feel the kinetic energy so strong that I could not help but just be there and feel her vitality, her life. It feels like she's right next to me. And by the way, it's incredible, that feeling. I hope you can enjoy that. Just, turn to the exhibition hall. Oh, maybe I'm doing so much advertisement. Here we go. So the art creation, let's say Kandinsky in his period, he also, do a lot of artworks based on that, or with the intention going towards the connection between music and art. And the time when I was feeling music, I thought I was crazy. And then years later, when I was a student, I realized I did my paper on him. I realized, oh my goodness, I was not crazy at all. Maybe I was feeling some kind of, synesthetic music. So here, just to remind you of his artwork. So if we put them together, you may say, they are some, in terms of visual, now it's only the visual. Visually, they look very alike. But I bet if any one of you or online, anyone who wants to do deeper investigation on the art reception side, please do the comparison between Kandinsky's music, Kandinsky's painting in relation to music and Lalan's painting in relation to music. And my justification to say that this kind of synesthesia is reasonable to be inferred in Lalan's artwork analysis is that I want you guys to, as Catherine has already mentioned, that her life, her personal life and her art life, she did get so deep into so many different forms of art, painting, music, and dance. And this is not her private life I'm talking about. This is her art life. She was, publicly and she was deliberately creating artworks based on these three categories. So this one you've already seen, and it was very fantastic story. And here is a kind of, special images to show the painting and dance and music. And this is, you may say this is a historical evidence. Yes, it is historical evidence. But today I'm using this piece of historical evidence to show her art creation as in this area. And the areas are three. So we have peinture, musique et danse, that is painting, music, and dance. So you may think these are very different forms of art. Yes, but she synthesized all of them in this one particular artwork here in 1973. And here, as Catherine has already mentioned about the 气韵生动, and here I want you to pay attention to the second word, 韵. And this 韵 has a very special role, but a lot of sources I found, they do not emphasize that. So the sources of these four Chinese characters, and in the translation of Soper and then translation from Acker, they do not emphasize the 韵. So these are the references that I got the sources. And I have my own translation because I'm not happy with the negation, with the neglect of the music part. And if you know how to read Chinese character, the yun has a lot to do with the rhythmic musicality. And if you are the big fan of Confucianism or Confucius, if you read the Analects, you will find a lot of passages talking about music and the importance of music, not just music, but the music can be used for so many different things, not only for your personal life, but for your ruling. You may think it's a little bit too much abstract, but I'm saying that music or musicality or a particular kind of music is extremely important in Confucianism, and that's why I want to emphasize the yun, this word, in these expressions. In order to emphasize or to have closer connotation of those 4 Chinese characters, 气韵生动, 黑文生动. And here is another expression. People, they are very aware of the fact that Lalan's artwork is full of music. It's not just visual. And of course, I want you guys to get one step forward. This is Confucius, and in this source, he says something like, to be stimulated by oaths, take your stand on the right, and then to be perfected by music. So can you see it's hierarchically arranged? And these kind of hierarchical thing, these 3 things, that means the highest ultimate life achievement is to have 3 things at least together. You cannot skip one another. And in order to achieve that kind of perfection, you need to have at least 3 things. And that is exactly what we see in Lalan's art creation. In her art creation, in terms of her art life does show us that there are at least 3 aspects. But of course, I would like to include, let's say, martial art, but not that far yet. So that is my justification to tell you why I would use a synesthetic perspective to analyze Lalan's artwork. So here, just to remind you, peinture, musique, et danse, these 3 things, they are all together. Then you may say, okay, Elaine, okay, in terms of art creation, and I see Lalan's artwork, and then so on and so forth. But how about other artists? Especially if you compare Lalan's artwork with Friedrich and Turner in the period of Romanticism, or talking about the sublimity. I'm seeing, so much similarity between Lalan and these artists. You're right. For example, Friedrich, my favorite. I got so deeply inspired by his artwork. And if you put Lalan's artwork together with him, visually, you might see a lot of similarities, that's for sure. And I'm not saying it is not true. Lalan's artwork, maybe, if you put it into Romanticism analysis, you might think, Lalan's artwork also generates or induces sublimity, that kind of sublime vision or sublime feelings. It is really relevant. Although I need to emphasize that although Lalan's artwork doesn't have Romanticism's historical context, that would be a little bit too much to make your argument. However, if you want to talk about the sublime art reception feeling, yeah, absolutely. I feel some kind of beyond and get above something, is above a human civilization. And that is exactly what sublime does to me. So here we go. Another one, this is Turner. He's in this period of his art life at that time, he started to paint in oil paint, but in a very kind of, liquidity, lucidity, just that kind of fluidity manner that it looks like watercolor. However, if you put them together with Lalan's artwork, you may say, so it's another, Romanticism. Historically, I don't think so. But in terms of the art reception side, you may say, it calls out that kind of romantic feeling. Romantic is not our everyday, that kind of romance. But in the 19th century, that kind of romantic era, you may think of the music of Liszt, so on and so forth. So here we go. If we put them together, we get to see a lot of, the fluidity. And you may also say, okay, so if this is the way to go, I can also see the dynamism or the flow, the wind, whatever. That is true. That is true. So my point is, in terms of all these visual characters or features, we may say they are very alike. Can we jump to the conclusion or jump to the argument that, then that means that Friedrich and Turner their artworks, they are also synesthesia. Well, I'm not so sure. I think it's really easy or is really okay to analyze their artworks in terms of art reception, to have to say something like, oh, I see, for example, Turner's, I see that kind of, music, crazy list, so on and so forth. Yes. But it's really hard to argue that on the side of art creation, Turner and Friedrich, they have that kind of music, dance as their background, as their synthesizing art creation process. That is really hard to argue, unless maybe you find, or maybe somebody will tell me that, oh no, I know Turner, he plays the piano, or oh, Friedrich, he practiced dance or ballet, or he even know about Tai Chi. If you find this kind of evidence, yay, then it would be easier to say, oh, okay, on the side of art creation, there's some kind of very strong synesthetic or synesthesia going on for his art creation. But for Lalan, it's much easier. Look at her life. We just heard the information from Catherine. Her life is full of so many different forms of art. And it's much easier. I'm not saying it's impossible to argue for Friedrich and Turner, but it's much easier to argue for Lalan that her artwork and her art creation has so much into each other to have that kind of synesthesia going on. Because blah, 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 and blah, 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 what you just have heard from Catherine, right? So that is my position for today's discussion. And so my point to show you Turner, Friedrich, is to tell you that unless we find some kind of very strong evidence to argue that on their art creation side, they do have some other dance or music, some other background, then then it's difficult to make this kind of argument. And here, if we put, their artworks together, we get to see visually, in terms of the visual presentation, they do look very much alike. But historically, we need to be very careful about the historical context in order to argue for the romantic or sublime, I would say, significance in art history, because Lalan did not live in the 19th century. Here we go. So the point to show you that is to justify how come synesthesia is at least very valid to be used for analyzing Lalan's artwork in order to understand her historical significance. And because of this, that is her art life, music, dance, and painting. So after that, I still have a little time before I move on to the Q&A session, is to talk about, after this session C, the next one is to talk about the historical significance. If we accept this perspective to think about Lalan's artwork from this kind of synesthetic perspective, then what's the big deal? It's just one more perspective added into Lalan's scholarship. Yes, it is just one more, but my position is that it has something very special about synesthesia in art history. You may not agree with me, but this is my point. I want to say that synesthesia in art or synesthetic art, they have much more synthesis, much higher level of synthesis, and they are much more inclusive. So what am I saying? Other than just say, oh, Lalan, synthesized everything into each other, then yeah, that's synesthesia. Well, I was saying that from Lalan's perspective, but now I want to talk about synesthesia, put everything together from the perspective of art history, or from the historical perspective. So before I do that, the stepping stone is sensory art. So by sensory art, they are also drawing our attention to the importance of a lot of different kinds of sensorial experience. But I want to argue that sensory art is less synthetic and less inclusive. How come? They are inclusive, by the way, and they are synthetic, but they are, compared with synesthesia, they are less here, I want to clarify that by sensory art, a lot of times, usually people would think of sensory art therapy. If you look it up, that's what you get. I'm not going there, but I'm talking about sensory art in terms of the sensorial experience. Because sensory, this word is very, very embracive. It includes a lot of these other things: sensorial, sensual, sexual, sensational. But today, my focus is on the sensorial experience, and all of you guys know what they are. They are these 5. So your visual, your oral, your gustatory, your olfactory, so on and so forth. And of course, you guys know that we have more than these 5 sensorial experiences, and the other senses are these. And I believe everybody would understand that when we are talking about Lalan's artwork, we cannot just be limited by those 5 senses. We need to be open to other senses, like especially abstract expressionist painters. They are very intuitive, okay, and you may find them very spiritual. So my point is, sensory art has some kind of very important contribution to art history, is to do something in order to fight against some kind of domination. What kind of domination in art? Is seeing. The visual art. So if we think of sensorial experience, there are 5. So what's the deal? The deal is that these 5, they are not emphasized enough equally. Usually would be the only one that is visual art. And in visual art, so it's so dominant that pretty much in the past few hundred years development, there is pretty much no emphasis or development in other senses art, only visual art. So my point is, if we do not have sensory art, we may not pay attention to other senses like your taste, your hearing. But those artists, sensory art artists, they do draw our attention to those areas. And so what's the historical significance? The historical significance is that, for example, in this artwork, Duchamp, 1919. So he's talking about the air of Paris. By the way, the original one was broken, and this one, pretty much, I cannot remember, maybe it's the 3rd version restored. And then some other contemporary artworks, they are emphasizing the non-visual experience, your touch. And then some artists, they are emphasizing your smell. You smell the world. Don't you see how smell is that important? And if you still don't understand that, maybe another artist, they create some kind of artwork, not only visually to look at the color, but also to have the smell. Too bad that this is a visual representation of the artwork. If you were there in person, I'm sure you would be so amazed by the smell, the pollen of hazelnut. And that is how the artist would describe is the smell from heaven. And here we go, another movie and novel talking about the importance of smell. And a lot of people may think, oh, that is just too much. I don't think smell can do that much. That's okay. But the key is smell does have some kind of important role or effect on you. Maybe you go along with your husband or your wife, your boyfriend or girlfriend. If you are deeply in love with him or her, usually you like his or her smell. So here, the sensory art artist or sensory art historical significance is to fight against this kind of domination by visual art. And this domination has been around for so long, and maybe those sensory art artists, they were so tired of this kind of domination, and they say, hey, we are going to do something other than just visual art. And in order to overturn this kind of domination, I want you guys to pay attention back to this one. This kind of detachment of the external world with the painting visually in order to understand the external world visually. And that is the system sensory art artists, they are trying to break down, or at least to challenge if they are not successful. But the key is to tell the world that, hey, our world and our civilization and even who we are and what we are not just our visual. We have so many other senses. So they believe that, we need to understand the whole world not only from seeing. And seeing has been, deemed as some kind of the most important and the most powerful thing to control the world, believe it or not. So how much information we get from our visual sense? So much. When we see something, we get influence. And it's also the case now. But the sensory art artists, they are trying their best through their artworks to tell or to remind us to pay attention to other senses. So this one is sensory art. Then come to the key focus for today is, synesthesia. I'm saying that synesthesia is much more synthetic and embracing, as I mentioned. So if you think of synesthetic experience on your side in art creation process, you may think, I want to, cut off my eye or visual experience and put it aside. You cannot. And if you want to, stop feeling kinetic movement, maybe you cannot. And that is something we need to have a further investigation on. But my point is, for Lalan, my position for today is to analyze her art creation. She synthesizes, embraces the whole thing. And this kind of, embracing attitude in her personal life and then in her art life, and then we get to see her art works. Then I am arguing that her artworks, is to remind us of the fact that we need to pay attention to our other senses in a very non-dominant way, and all the senses should be mutually included. So here is the reminder you've already seen, and it's non-dominant, and they are mutually inclusive with each other. And here, if we look at Lalan's artwork, I don't know how about you, that is the time when I felt so much about my body. I cannot explain it. I hope that one day, or very soon, somebody or some scientist or maybe one of you guys can explain to me how come I felt that way. But I'm sure at that time when Lalan was painting her artwork like this one, she was full of that kind of kinetic energy. And then, to look at the brushwork. And of course, you may draw this painting in relation to the line or the linear pattern with Chinese calligraphy tradition. That's absolutely very good analysis. Oh, here we reminds me to round up. So here we go. So here is another example. I felt so strongly. And in me, I'm not speaking for you, but in me, I felt that kind of, hand gesture and the body movement, and in a very vivid and very kind of physical way. And then the other one is this one. And this, we've heard about that from Catherine, and I want you guys to think about, all these is to bring your Lalan's inner world into the outer expression. Her outer expression is very connected with her inner world. So this one, and I believe that if we can be more embracive and inclusive, our world would not be this kind of a dual dilemma. We do not have to choose either one or either or. We can do this if we are not only dominated by seeing, by visual art. Then we can have our, at the same time, physical and mental, so on and so forth. And the whole thing to do that is to emphasize this. this is American Austrian American psychoanalyst, and he talked about in our real world, our real life operation, actually we are always synthesizing almost everything. So here, sensation is generally synthetic, perception is synthetic. So how can you deny? Pretty much we cannot, but it depends how we are going to proceed with our knowledge and our awareness with our life and with Lalan's artwork. So I want to say that for Lalan, she did it in the 1970s openly in her artwork. And in our own time, these are the modern contemporary artists. They did, a lot of them, they are still working on synesthesia, and they do it, look at the time, 1996, and then the other one is 2003, it's the millennium era. But look at the time, 1973. She did that. So how many decades that Lalan was ahead of time, and it's incredible. And as Catherine mentioned, she wants to be herself, and she doesn't want to be just a wife of somebody who is famous. And this kind of individuality and that kind of thrive for your own existence draw her to be ahead of time that much. And now we are very lucky to see her artworks in person. So if for those who are online, please come to the exhibition hall and enjoy the painting here. And I want to end my presentation with all these artworks to talk about, her inner world is not only a personal inner world, and it touches at the external bigger world. And if you allow me, it touches the whole universe. And I want to end the whole sharing with this expression. I find it very moving. So it's the deepest purification and the lucidity of her artwork. That is extremely inspiring. So this is the final part to justify how come we should consider synesthetic perspective when we are analyzing Lalan's artwork. And again, I invite you guys to go further, and I hope you can maybe someday tell me, your art reception or even your further investigation on Lalan's art creation. So that is my presentation for today, and thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. There are 10 minutes.
And now we are open for the questions. So should you have any questions, you can just raise your hand and we will bring the microphone to you. And you can have questions for either Dr. Kwok or Ms. Catherine Kwok. No, is it? No questions?
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Kwok, for the wonderful
welcome.
presentation. I was just wondering, you mentioned the concept of total art. When was that concept first proposed in the art world?
I haven't done enough historical research to tell you the exact date or exact year, but it's pretty much in the 90s, if I don't remember wrong, and it's pretty much on the artworks, especially with installation. So installation, some of them, they study that. So that German word is to talk about the even interior design. And if you look it up, you may find kind of, even include furniture design. Yeah, but I am planning on looking into that one more and can say more about that with you. Yeah, thank you for your question. Any other question? Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation.
Oh, you're welcome.
But I'm curious when you say synesthesia. The thing is, when you look at a painting, it say a blind person cannot see the painting as normal people do who are not disabled. So any sort of sound or spiritual, intuitive feelings that you develop from looking at the painting is a derivatives of looking at the painting, which means that it's a secondary than your visual.
Are you talking about painting? To feel the painting instead of to look at the painting.
Exactly. So
at the same time, still have that kind of synesthetic experience.
Yes.
Very interesting, inspiring question. Well, it's my speculation, by the way. So when I read Gilles Deleuze's analysis, by the way, that book was on Francis Bacon. He was not talking about color. However, I had a pretty similar question. I was thinking, can we feel the painting instead of see the painting? And you know what? When I'm looking at, let's say, Rothko, his color patches, and the significance or the importance for me to get from Rothko's painting, I mean, for me, I'm not speaking for everyone, for me was to feel the color energy. If you do believe in that, so some alternative therapy, they believe a color has energy. And if you do believe in that, and if I were blind and I'm in front of Rothko's painting, I cannot see the color, but I can feel the color in terms of the energy. And maybe, I'm not so sure that's the case, but maybe subatomic particles or people, they measure that kind of energetic emission. They might have some kind of machine to measure that. That would be fantastic, but now I don't really know. And I hope your question can bring people's attention to measuring. Can we feel color? Can we just feel the painting without looking at it? Right? I don't know, but you know what? Personally, I think so. But just I don't have the evidence. I think so. Thank you. Any other questions? Or maybe also for Catherine or for me? Any online questions?
Not yet. No.
Okay.
Since this is the end of the presentation, thank you, Dr. Kwok, and
Yeah,
thank
you're
you, Ms.
welcome.
Kwai. Thank you very much. We have a tiny souvenir for both of you.
Oh, so sweet of you.